So with me today, I have the very, very famous, very world-renowned operator, Lou Hobaica from Hobaica Services. Um, Lou, was it 3 years ago we started talking? Does that sound about right?
I'm going to say I met you 4 or 5 years ago, and I had approached you at a service roundtable event. It was an SMA event, and it was for valuation.
Right.
At that time, I was getting an annual valuation on my company for our buy-sell. And I went to you for a valuation, said, hey, I'm not looking to sell. I say 5 years ago. And then you and Fred gave a presentation and provided me a valuation to be able to tie into our buy-sell.
Sure. And off of that, it gave you some ideas of where some things were and enabled you to take the next couple of years on what you wanted to do. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was 2 or 3. And, I don't want to get these things wrong because I know who I'm dealing with. God forbid I should get something out of place. I know that you were going to correct me. So this should be very exciting.
I wasn't sure who you were talking about when you said world-renowned, famous Lou Hobaica. So I don't know. But anyways,
it's good to know if I straddle too far from the middle, you're going to bust my balls equally on one side or the other. And that's what I appreciate. And that's why I'm happy you're here with us today.
I'm here for you.
I know you are. You've been fantastic. I appreciate that. First question. Let's talk about Hobaica. Let's talk about it from the beginning. A lot of people have stories of how their business grew from, step one through to where it is today. Yours is incredibly interesting. I think you're second generation, if I'm not mistaken. You took the business over, bought it out from your dad.
Yes.
Give us a story. You have a great story, and you got your brothers and family involved, and there's a lot of blood.
Okay, I'll give you the skinny story of Hobaica Services. So my grandfather, Lebanese immigrants, was about 1917, married in Lebanon, had 2 daughters. My father hadn't arrived yet. And my grandfather talked to his brother, who had a dry goods store here in Phoenix, Arizona. Email, forget that. A letter, right? An actual written letter. So he says, hey, brother, come out to Phoenix, land of opportunity, great place to raise a family. Lebanon wasn't in a good situation, even at that time, as we compare to today. So he packed everything up, 1917, and started on a journey, car, boat, train, foot, and it ended up in Cuba 3 years later in 1920. My grandmother got pregnant with my father. He was actually born in Cuba in 21. And then they finally made it over 1922-ish to Phoenix. He was a door-to-door salesman. My dad went to a local Catholic school, and a little skirmish broke out called World War II, and they drafted every able-bodied man, woman to fight. My father was drafted to the Army, and he was a radio operator. War ended. Under the GI Bill, got an education grant. Went to the college and talked to the counselor and said he wanted to be an electrician because he had electrical background in construction, as well as he was a radio operator, had to manage and tend to and repair the radio out in the field. So he was good with that kind of stuff. Electrical school was full. So the counselor broke the bad news to him and said, but you know what? We have an up and coming industry called refrigeration. And my dad also wanted to take business and a trade and then open his own. So he says, okay, I'll try refrigeration. So I took refrigeration business, opened Hobaica's Refrigeration in 1952. And business started to grow as Phoenix started to grow. It was a small, little city. Even back then, we're probably less than 100,000. And it started to just explode. And no different than today, you couldn't find people, honest, ethical, hardworking people, good work ethic to work with them and for them. So him and my mom put their 2 heads and bodies together and figured, heck, if we can't find them, we're going to make them. So they had 7 kids and actually had 11 kids, and 4 didn't make it. So the strong will survive. That's what happened back then. So 7 survived, and we all, were deemed to and expected to work in the business. So I grew up in the business, basically helper. Became a technician at 16. I was the compressor king because we didn't change equipment back at that time. You'd install equipment, from scratch, or evaporative cooler to air conditioning. And I changed, 5, 6, 7, 8 compressors a day. That's just what we did. No recovery. So it was nice and quick and easy. So fast forward, my brother and I, my oldest brother, Paul, and I, he had an engineering degree from ASU. I got a business degree. And we bought the company in 1989 from my mother and father. At that time, it was an $800,000 top line revenue company with 6 employees, and Paul and I were 2 of them. So it was like a really teeny company. And my dad just kind of got, tired of the whole deal and didn't want to really just stress over the business anymore. It provided good wealth to him and income and supporting his family, all his kids through college. And he was just kind of like riding the wave to retirement. So Paul got in, I got in, we wanted to grow this business. So we then started to expand, 2 young college graduates and engineering and business management. And so we started to grow the business and then add additional trade, become a multi-trade. So we added, plumbing, drain, sewer, electric, security, wine rooms. So a whole different vast, all the trades, and really started to grow the business. So that's where we're at.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, it's impressive to be able to carry something on, because everybody knows the statistics. The second generation, typically that's I think the failure rate goes up exponentially, right? Because they're not wired the same way to go ahead and drive it the way the original founder was. But my gosh, I mean, listen, I've known you now obviously for several years. I've been to the business. I've hung out with you, your wife, your family, met everybody. Yeah, you are wired differently. So those numbers don't necessarily work for you. You're on the other side of those numbers. Your brothers, the 3 of you have been in there for, almost 30 years together, correct?
Yeah. So Paul and I, 89. So that brings us 33 years now. And then another brother came in. He was also an engineer, worked for Hughes Missile Systems in Tucson. Things weren't working out too well in the early 90s after Desert Storm. There weren't any good wars to build bombs for, so business was suffering, a little difficult. So he moved over and joined us, and then became a partner in 2001. So it was the 3 of us. And basically, what I get asked this question a lot, how do 3 brothers work together? And
correct.
We each had different skill sets. We identified our skill sets and plugged those skill sets into defined, business roles. And you were responsible for this and this and this. I was always the operational guy and the financial guy and, the hard, bad news kind of a guy. And my brothers stayed out of that, and they focused on their strength, and we just supported each other. So we just knew where we, had our skill set, and it worked out well.
Not surprising, obviously, and knowing you the way that I do in the conversations we've had, that you would be the detailed, responsible, everything would flow through you to make sure that everybody, you had your finger on everything. You knew what was going on at all times. Yeah, next level
anal
type
maybe,
A.
Anal maybe.
Next level type A, whatever, you call it whatever you want. It's all the same. So here we go. We flash forward a couple of years from our original meeting 4 or 5 years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, you called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, Brian."
Yeah, I did. So my brother Paul, original partner, has Parkinson's, and that was diagnosed in 2012. So it was about 10 years ago. And it's really started to take a toll on him. And this is about maybe 3 years ago, I really noticed it. And my brother will work with him every day, my other brother, Mike, that Paul's health was really declining. He couldn't function very well anymore. He couldn't manage people. His ability to control his emotions, it was challenging because he was a lot of medication to be able to manage the Parkinson's, and he was just having trouble. So we knew his time was limited and we needed to get him bought out, right? So we had a goal by the end of 2020. We were going to buy Paul out. We're going to get an SBA loan. We're going to buy Paul out, continue with our valuation. And then we all know what happened, late March of 2020, something hit us. It's deemed something different now than it was then, but whatever side of the fence you're on, I don't care. So we call it a pandemic. It hit us, and it kind of like changed the world, and it shut a lot of our world and country down. However, it was a perfect storm for businesses like ours in the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, especially residential home service retrofit type businesses. It was perfect. People were stuck at home. They still had money. And they said, "Hey, we're going to be here for a temporary period of time. We might as well get some stuff done." So they started to fix everything up, new HVAC, remodels, duct cleaning, plumbing, drain, sewer, electrical, panels, you name it, everything was just hitting. So we had a banner year. But again, like I came to you 5 years ago, I said, "Hey, Brian, Fred, I need a valuation on my company to tie into our buy-sell in case one of us dies. The buy-sell life insurance will pay the deceased wife off, so that deceased brother and spouse no longer has any, involvement in it and control and ownership." So I came to you, and you and Fred communicated a valuation, and our valuation went from here, and it like tripled. No, actually it quadrupled. from where our valuation was set, quadrupled. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So, I'm the numbers guy, and I'm like, well, Paul's going to get out at the top of the market, right? So these multiples are just crazy. What's happening now? I never envisioned anything like it. I said, so I had kind of a difficult meeting with my brothers, and I said, hey, Paul, this is the valuation of our company approximately. We never know unless we find out what somebody would pay for it, but this is our deemed valuation right now. It's 4 times what it was last year. That's a good thing for the business, but that puts Mike and I, the remaining brothers, in a difficult spot, meaning you're getting out to the top of the market. I'm 59 at the time, 2 years ago, and my brother Mike was 57 and Paul was 65. That was the age. And I said, Mike and I, we have 4 or 5 years left. We may never see this upside again. So you're going to go off happy-go-lucky with your family, get all this money. Mike and I are going to have this huge note that we're going to have trouble paying off. We're going to be cash strapped, and the company is going to be cash strapped. So we're going to be in a difficult situation. And when our time comes to retire and sell out, whether it's an internal sale or external, we're not going to get this big truckload of money that you get. So I said, this isn't going to work. I said, I was talking to Brian and Fred, really the only way we can see a true valuation is just like anything that you want to sell. You have to put it out in the market and see what someone will pay for it.
Yep.
That'll give you a true valuation. So I recommend we go to market. We see what it'll bring. And if it looks like it's a good amount and it's reasonable and we all agree to it, then we go to market and we sell our company. We've already found out that we're not going to have an internal sale. We had some kids in the business, weren't a good transition to sell. So we were going to look at that outside opportunity and really try to capitalize on this market that we never really realized would ever happen. So we went to market, and I called you up and said, okay, Brian, we're ready to go. You said, okay, Lou, get all this stuff together. It usually takes a month or 2 for people to get it together. I said, I'll get it to you by the end of the week. So Lou got it to you by the end of the week. And you said you brought me maybe 15 interested parties that you had in your hot pot ready to go before we went to market, and said, hey, we got these companies interested in you. If we go to market, you're probably going to get another 70 or 80 offers that'll really confuse things. You might want to take a look at these first. So I did. I looked at them. And we narrowed them down to 1 and negotiated with 1, and it looked like a really good offer. So I went in with an original valuation year prior here. It quadrupled when your business valuation came to me. Then when we said we're going to go to market, I said, okay, Brian and Fred, I need this much money. So it was another maybe 30% more. That's the minimum I need. And you guys ended up, end of story, got me another 65% more than what my base was that I had to have, right? So it all worked out well. But back to that first agreement.
I'm just going to get the tears. Give me 1 second.
We agreed to the first P&E, and you guys were with me the whole time. And basically it started to go sour 2-yard line, 3.5 months in before we were going to score. And I called Brian you up and I said, hey, this isn't looking good. This is what they're doing. They're pulling a fast one. They're changing the LOI. They're putting conditions, on my payout and timeline, and I have to meet this criteria. I said, that wasn't our agreement. I said, this just tells me what they're going to do moving forward. I don't trust these guys. And so you gave me some direction. You've done this so many times, and Fred. And so I just basically gave them the ultimatum, and I said, hey, original agreement, or I walk away at 5 p.m. today.
Yep.
Gave me the him-ha long story. And so, we walked away that day at 5 o'clock. By next day, you and Fred had another maybe 10 offers to me, again, before I went to market. And you had some really, much better offers than my first 3.5 months of hideous due diligence. So at that point, I vetted those, and there was one company that I ended up going with, Service Champions, which I know Leland Smith, I know Frank DeMarco, been following these guys a long time, solid company, had a great alignment with exactly what my business is and how we represent and communicate our business every day, honest, ethical, our branding. They're just much larger, and they have a large network of companies that they were already building. I think it was 11 at that time. And so anyways, met with them and their team, about maybe half a dozen, I say about 10 of them on their team, had a Zoom call. And I basically loved what they had to say. Their offer was solid, negotiated that a little bit. And it was, again, so 65% above my original minimum. You got me another 20% with my first opportunity, and then another 45% on top of that with the second round. And by this time, you probably figured, well, Lou's really good at due diligence. He's got his shit in order. So, what's the big deal? He can do this again. So I did
the first time. Let's have.
Yeah, I did. And then I just, my one request for Leland Smith with Service Champions was, I said, I want to get this done in 1 month.
Yep.
We were mid-March and we're heading into our summer and we're going to get really hot and busy. And I said, it's only me and my controller doing this due diligence, and it's a full-time job for 2 or more of us, and we're doing our other jobs. So I said, we need to get this over. He said, okay, we can do that. It ended up being about a 6-week process. It was still pretty quick. There was a little issue at the end, meaning I had to change from an S corp to an LLC, and that just created a little dysfunction with just legal and government type things. But we all got it worked through and ended up in 6 weeks. You guys got me another 65% on top of what I had to have, and I mean, you guys were just fantastic. So one of my aligning yourself with a really good business broker. Brian, a great representative, your entire team with SF&P, couldn't have had a better experience. And then you had support, several individuals on your team that were just huge in supporting. And there's one individual that you've heard mentioned many times in your company. His name's Darcy. Really smart financial dude, but not only is he smart financially, he's been in the HVAC plumbing home service business for a long time. So he knows our systems, processes, what we do, how we do things, maintenance agreements, financials, how we just dial everything in, lay it out. So, I mean, I've done this a long time. I'm not the smartest guy, and you're dealing in due diligence with these guys that are really well-educated Ivy League dudes. These are smart dudes, really high IQ. I'm just a hands-on experience guy, knowing through experience. That's where I get my knowledge, right? I look at financials, I massage them, and I'm able to analyze them, but not to the detail they do. And they ask me questions that I have no freaking clue. I'm like, I try to look smart, not look stupid, right? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll get that done. I have no clue, right? And I go to my controller, I have no clue. So Darcy just saved our bacon so many times. Says, no big deal, Lou. Says, I'll get that dialed in. We'll get that together. Oh, we'll do this. And he put it together, a pro forma for me, and we massage it a little bit. So just a huge saving grace, from beginning to end in both due diligences. But it all ended up, working out well.
What's interesting is, and I want to touch on this, when we originally spoke, and again, everybody knows you, right? You wanted initially to partner and be a platform, right? Because there is, and again, depending on where you're at and who you partner with, there's different types of upside. And remember, one of the challenges sometimes with partnering to be a platform is that is their first investment, right? So with that first guy, group, whatever, we went through.
Oh, an H group. Group H.
The first group, they hadn't done this before. So they had success in other areas, but this was new to them. They were looking again for your guidance to go ahead and take them to the next level. And that's where it got interesting, right? The diligence cadence wasn't what it was with everybody else, so on and so forth. And then you realized, wow, I remember the conversations. If this is how it's going to be, and I'm the platform, what's going to happen as I'm trying to ask people to come in? I mean, we can't go through this multiple times. And I agree.
I know. Yeah. So they had done it in different industries, totally unrelated to our industry. But so I figured, okay, so I can be a platform to be able to help grow the Phoenix, the Arizona market and things like that, and utilize this and be able to, cross-pollinate and build and make other companies successful and such and build upon that. So that was all good. But I figured they could take some of their expertise in other, business groups and industries and apply it, but they couldn't. There was like a big disconnect. So I was the guy, right? I was everything. And then my wife's like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to have like 5 jobs now? Right? Is this going to take you away from me more? Are you going to have to travel now? She says, this sounds complicated. And then they started to change things up. And I'm like, okay, no, this isn't, a wise move. So all in all, it ended up just, I was a smarter person through the whole experience and I think I had to go through that really to realize. And if I would have gone with somebody else to begin with and not gone through that process, I wouldn't have ended up with the deal where I ended up today, which was 65% more. Or let's go back to my original valuation, six times my original valuation of what we were basing our life insurance buy sell off. And that's where I really thought the numbers, they had always been, Ryan.
Right.
So go back to so I've been around a long time. I've gone through a lot of M&A periods. So back when you were in diapers in 98, 99, right? In the late 90s, there was yeah, okay, you're not that young, but anyways. So, okay, you're riding your bicycle, right? Anyway, so late 90s, there was an M&A period. And then 2004, 5, 6, not maybe a little bit into 7, and then the market crashed. But those are some big M&A timeframes. And the big difference between now and those was back then it was a 3 to 5 multiple, right? 3 to 5 multiple on a primarily residential service retro company, HVAC, plumbing, electric. And the EBITDA was based on a 3 to 5 year average. So you could have had a really good year, okay year, not so good year, and a really shitty year, right? So they're all blended together. And then that is your EBITDA. Now, this time around, it's like, oh my God, we're in double-digit EBITDAs, and it's a rolling 12-month EBITDA. And from the onset of the pandemic, the perfect storm, every company like mine in my type of plumbing, HVAC, electrical, all of those industries in the residential market primarily, all of our 12-month rolling EBITDAs are the best, and they're continually being the best we've ever seen. So this is like, we've been at the top end of the market for just over 2 years now, and it's just a crazy ride. So yeah, it was a perfect time for us to be able to get out. And I'm no young kid, so I'm 61. My other brother's 59, and my oldest brother that we got retired. So that was his retirement to get him paid off and out. He's 68 now, right? 68 years old. So I mean, it was a good time for all of us. And my brother and I have, some time left on what we want to do, whether we're going to continue or just, we have 1 year left. We just had our 1 year anniversary on the 7th of May, because we closed the 7th of May of 2021. So we had a 1 year anniversary. We have a 2 year employment agreement. And we'll see after that what really happens, but we have a lot of options. We're still, young individuals. Anyways, yeah, so that's where we're at.
Which is kind of why I wanted to have this conversation, right? You're a year past the transaction. So over the last year, what changes? What's been different? Or has it pretty much been the same? You have a partner now that you can rely on. Give us your insight.
Yeah. So what was a little scary was I know a lot of companies and knew back in the late 90s and the early 2000s that did sell. And the majority of every one of those turned into a nightmare, because the P&Es, mergers and acquisitions deals, these investment companies weren't very bright. They didn't know what they didn't know, so they had to learn through experience. So they ended up coming in most cases, and just changing the whole management team, employees, processes, programs, systems, compensation. Don't touch compensation. You'll scare everybody away. So they changed everything. The businesses just went belly up, and most of those companies, I won't mention a lot of these big groups, but there were, a good 5 or 10 of these monstrous groups that the companies just went belly up. So they ended up selling off those companies for maybe 10 cents on the dollar afterwards. And a lot of the prior owners repurchased their company for 10 cents on what they were paid off for it of the dollar. So they ended up doing well. So the investment companies are much smarter, the P&Es, right? You have these wealthy individuals that invest in these private equity companies because these companies know how to make money. And if the wealthy people put their money into them, they know that they're safe, one of the safest investments, and they know they're going to make money. So what they've learned is, okay, we're going to, instead of buying the cheapo companies that need to be, fixed up, band-aided and ramped up and revitalized, we're going to buy really solid, successful, well-built management, process-driven, culture-driven very profitable, well-run companies with great reputations. And we're going to pay really, really good money. And we're going to tuck them in and just let them do their thing. Heck, we have a lot of money. We have buying power. We have a lot of resources that we can assist them if needed, but we're not going to make them or do anything. So to answer your question, literally nothing changed. So when I rolled this out to my team, and of course, everyone's scared to death, they're afraid, then you bring service champions, corporate, the management team in, and they meet the team, and there's a Q&A, and they're all like, oh, we're going to get shafted. What's happening? Lou's not telling us everything. Lou's going to be gone, and we're going to be stuck. I better start shopping. So all these thoughts go through their mind. After a week, promises that I had made and they had made, they started to see more money, better compensation, better programs, better insurance, better buying power, more opportunities within the company, a better apprenticeship program. They're like, wow, good things are happening. So I'm saying 2-3 weeks after the deal, everybody forgot about anything. It was still Hobaica Services, name doesn't change, branding stays the same, marketing stays the same EIN number. Lou's still here, managing and running the company, all the management teams here, all of our programs and our benefits and, spiff programs and bonuses and comp plans, they're all the same and better. So, this is a good thing. We had a great opportunity here. So that all went away and literally nothing changed, and all service champions. And that's why I partnered with them. And there's several just like that. They just pay really, really good money for well-run, well-profitable companies, and they want you to keep doing the same thing. And if there's an area that I want to maximize, they have the ability to be able to help me with that. But they don't come in and change a thing. They just want a good thing to keep pumping out the golden egg, and that's all that they want. So good thing. I have some different reporting that I have to report, because now the investors and the corporate wants to see your financials maybe a little bit quicker. A little bit different format. So there's reporting and, some reporting meetings weekly, maybe 1 or 2 weekly meetings for about a half hour, just on reporting where things are at, your pulse on the business. And literally, nothing's changed. The expectations were actually, or even going into 2022 for budgeting, were lower than my budgeting expectations. So, easy to achieve, nothing astronomical, not like, okay, we want you to double the business next year. We want you to double your net profit. And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. So they're actually lower than my budgeting forecast on where we were at. So I just stayed with our budgeting, our forecasting, and theirs is below mine. So we hit ours, then we'll make everybody happy, right?
Really happy.
Yeah.
They're not there to bust chops. They're not looking for the 30 to 40% growth. Listen, the reality is at a certain point in time, geographically speaking, it's unsustainable. You know what I mean? So they're going to lean on a bunch of numbers, which they did with you, to go ahead and get some growth through some back office synergies. You continue rowing the boat in the same direction you've been rowing. Naturally, you're going to get, a pretty good growth, over the coming years. What's interesting is, obviously, and again, I've repeated this probably the third time that we know each other, and I've appreciated, I think within this transaction, Lou, everything we've talked about so far is I'm thrilled with, and I'm sure anybody that's listening is thrilled as well. Your aspect on family and how important that is in what you're doing, not only your brothers, right? The wives, the kids, everybody wants an opportunity taken care of, but at the same time being responsible. For me, looking at these businesses where there are fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, kids, so on and so forth involved, it could get really messy. Yours was not. As a matter of fact, it was maybe been easier than when there's just one sole owner, right? You guys came together, you made your decisions, you had your agreements put in place, you all honored your agreements. It was just a really impressive, it was an impressive deal, the way that it was handled, because there were a lot of wrenches in the equation, right? There could have been a hiccup at any one point in time. Talk through some of that. The kids are involved. Like we sat down for, on breakfast that one morning, right? For probably an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I remember you went through telling me, and I wish I would have recorded that. And I promise you I will record that, because that was unbelievable. The agreements that you had in place for your kids, right? And the expectations. And when you do this, we do this. And if you don't do this, then we don't do this. And it's written down, and you had a weekly conversation about it, if I'm not mistaken, on Sundays, and they wrote out what they were going to do, and everybody sat down. If somebody was off page, you had a conversation about it and realigned to which direction you needed to go in. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever heard. And by the way, if you don't know Lou Hobaica, Lou, I'm telling you, they should get your phone number. You got to record that. They should call you and ask you about that, because that was off the charts. Here I am still talking about it. And this was 14, 15 months ago. And I remember the conversation because I remember what you were eating and what I was eating that morning at breakfast. That was really something, but it gave me an insight to how things are handled within your business too, right? Think about the things you said. You had two brothers involved. You had to have a hard conversation, but everybody had enough respect for each other because of the roles and responsibilities that were established over years, right? How people were accountable for what they needed to be accountable for. And you have kids that are in the business too that needed to be taken care of.
Right.
So that's a lot of balls in the air. And you realize at times, and I never heard one time in all the years I've known you that, oh yeah, one of them fell, we have this problem, which is the more family you have in the business, exponentially things start to,
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, family can be really challenging. Fortunately, my skill set is I'm an operations guy and I'm a numbers guy. That's not my brother's skill set, and they understand that. So they rely on me for that. So they've always trusted me with whether it was the business, the financials, the budgeting, the forecasting, and they were always part of it. They wanted to know, but I was always in the lead, as well as investment. So money out of the business, investing, buying a lot of real estate and things like that. I was always in the lead and they trusted me on that. So shit did hit the fan on that first P&E that I partnered with, the H group, right?
That we were looking to, correct.
Yeah, because when I walked away, the wives, my brothers, had no question. They say, okay, Lou, if you think that's the right thing to do, then, we're with you. But the wives in the background said, oh my God, they're calling my wife. What's your husband doing? He's walking away from this deal. This is freaking crazy. Does he have his head screwed on straight? They're all getting upset and emotional about it. And my brothers are like, Lou, my wife's really nervous about this. What's going on? Why are we walking away? And I said, hey guys, I said, I got some good people on my team. I got SF&P. I said, this deal isn't working out. It's not going to be in our best interest. I promise you. I said, we will get a better deal. We'll get a lot more money and a much better deal for everybody. Trust me. And you and your team, came up and,
we weren't happy. Listen, you weren't happy. We knew enough people. We knew you had a great business.
Exactly. Yeah.
We tried it from the platform perspective, right? Where there was going to be a much different upside for you if we could have gotten that deal done, right? But at the end of the day, you realize, you're an astute business person. You understand the responsibility that comes with owning a business along with your brothers. And you were going to get multiplied times 3, 4, or 5. You were never going to be home. They were going to ask you to do a whole lot of things at a certain point in time. You just weren't going to do it anymore.
Right.
I think personally made the great decision. We've done plenty of transactions with Service Champions. They're a great group. And we never hear anybody complain. And I hope that people call you, by the way, because you're an amazing mentor. Like, it's not often that I have a client that I'm calling on talking about, life stuff. And we've had these conversations before. Usually it's the other way around.
Yeah. So you had mentioned the whole kid thing in the agreement. So
I love that. That was
I did raise my kids in my family just like a business. But there was love and emotion involved in it, but they all had a contract. As soon as they understood what they were working for, they had goals, they had visions for what they wanted, in year 6 of their life, right? What they wanted. And it might have been a bicycle, or it could have been whatever it was. They had goals and dreams and aspirations. So every one of them had a contract, a Hobaica family agreement, and it would be pinned up, actually a document on an actual bulletin board. There were no electronics, right? So a bulletin board in their room would pin it up and be Hobaica rules. This is what's allowed. This is what's not allowed. You do this, you get this. So it was a meritocratic type compensation plan, whether it was monetarily or recognition, and not love. They were loved unconditionally, but you did this, you got this, and you got these privileges. And then every year or twice a year, we would update that as they grew and they wanted to change what they were working towards and what their goals were and what responsibilities were and their curfews and whatever they were involved in. And like you said, we would have a family meeting. We ate dinner together every night. That was a must. But every Sunday night, each of my sons, I had 3 boys, each of them were required to sit down with mom and dad and just have a minimum 15-minute conversation about prior week, what happened, what was memorable, what was big, what was not so good, what could you improve on, and then what your upcoming week looked like. And the only way to find out what's going on in your kids' lives is get them talking, and things will naturally evolve and come out. If you ask them a question, they won't tell you. But if people are sharing, then things come out, and it just starts to flow. It's just natural conversation of how the human and the mind work. So we were able to dial into their lives, support them. They knew we were there, that cared. We weren't being too overbearing. They knew what was allowed, and they had goals that they were working towards. And, I'm always, one that you have to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. You have to have something to work for. And at the end of the day, when you accomplished it, there's not many people to pat you on the back. So you pat yourself on the back, I'm accomplished. I did a good thing. I got that done. You checked it off. And that's what keeps people going and feeling good about themselves and building confidence. And it's the same with your kids. So I did it the exact same way throughout their entire life, into high school, college planning, life planning, career planning, family planning, anything and everything. And I think it proved beneficial because all three of my boys, they have turned out to be very successful individuals, and they're good family people. They have kids, they love their wives, they're faithful, they're dedicated, they're God-loving men, and they make a hell of a lot more money than I did at their age. And that's a good thing, a lot. So it's good.
I appreciate that. And that was really an eye-opening conversation that we had that morning. I've told it to a whole lot of people. And now that a whole lot of people are going to see this podcast, you're probably going to get a bunch of calls saying, hey, can you elaborate on that? So sure. You and I may want to go offline and record this so that you can say, hey, no problem. Just give me your email address. I'll just send it over to you. I mean, that was really, that was something else, but that's a testament to the type of person you are. I don't want to run this, long. You have been absolutely incredible as always. And I appreciate the time. I'm going to wrap with one last question here. Okay. Do you believe it is the time to make a transaction happen? If you owned a business right now, would you be looking to make a transaction happen? Should I keep or sell my business?
That's a real interesting question. I get asked that a lot of times, and they'll ask me about, my situation, my feel on it. And I'll tell them, and they say, I think I'm just going to keep my business. I'm doing so well. The profitability is just out of this world. I'm just a cash cow. Why would I give this up? Mm-hmm. Right. And they may be in their 30s, they may be in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And I tell them, I said, this is my mindset. Take it or leave it. Everything that you have in life, right? Everything you have in life has a price on it, except two things in my book: my wife and my kids. Everything else is for sale. I have thought of selling my kids before, not my wife. My kids, yes, it's just they haven't brought me enough money. They haven't deemed enough yet. But anyways, aside from that, everything's for sale mindset at the right time and at the right price. So let's talk about Brian's dream house. What's your house of your dreams? You could have that house that you would really want, and you'd want you and your family to live in. How much would that dream house cost?
A lot.
2 million, 3 million, 5 million, give me a number.
Sure. Say 5 million.
5 million. Okay. So you just got your $5 million dream house. You and your family just moved in. You've been in there less than a month. You got it all dialed in, professional movers, interior decorators. It's just perfect. It's to your dream. You don't even know if you're awake when you're living in it because it's just a dream. It's perfect. You get a knock on your door, and the individual says, hey, Brian, I really like your house. I saw you've moved in recently. I'll give you $25 million for your house right now.
Out.
You're going to say, let me get the keys. Here they are. Take the furniture. I'm grabbing my kids and my wife, and I'm leaving. You'll just do it because the timing's right and the timing wasn't right, but the price was right. Everything has a number on it. So whether it's blood, sweat, and tears, or it's monetary investment, everything has a price. I mean, heck, I collect and restore muscle cars, right? 60, 70 muscle cars. I'll spend 2 years on a car. For the right dollar, I'll sell any of them at any time for the right number, but it has to be the right number. So when we look at where the multiples are in our business today on a 12-month rolling EBITDA of our perfect storm of this so-called pandemic, right? So this is the example that I'll give. I'll give a relatively simple example on a 10% return on investment. Okay, so Brian, you own a 10 million top line revenue company. Your service retro business, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, 10 million revenue, and you're pretty profitable, 15%. So that means 100, that's mean 1.5 million net profit each year, right? And you know as well as I do, because I've been doing this a long time, you're not going to take 1.5 million home. It takes a lot of money to continue to run, to build vehicles, building assets and all that stuff. So say you pay yourself 200 grand a year to maintain your lifestyle. You're doing well, your significant other, your kids, everyone's happy. And you're able to take an additional bonus of 400 grand a year out of that 1.5. That's reasonable. Mm-hmm. And that 400 after tax will probably net you about 250. So say you take that 250 and you invest it in a 10% return on investment. So okay. I have actually calculated these numbers. I've told it so many times, so I know the numbers. After 5 years of doing that, 250 a year, investing 250 a year, 5 years, you'll end up at 10%, $2 million in the bank. You'll have $2 million in that investment. After 10 years, you'll end up with $5 million. Not bad. After 20 years of running this highly profitable business consistently and your bonus every year, and you're not going to have okay years, poor years, shitty years. They're all going to be really good years, right? Yep. So after 20 years, you got 17 million in the bank in that investment. You're like, shit, I did pretty good. So you're happy. Pat yourself on the back. Way to go. Now let's look at the opportunity of selling when the market's at its high at double-digit multiples. So I won't go too crazy. I'll do a 10x multiple at the 1.5. You're going to sell it today. I don't care if you're 30, 40, 50, 60. You're going to sell it today. Maybe you're 30 and you got a lot of time left in your career. Like, why do I want to sell? I can ride this out. I'll end up 17 million in the bank in 20 years. Great, fine. So I'm going to sell it today. So 1.5 at a 10x is 15 million. 20%, say 20% capital gains tax, I'm going to net 12 million. 12 million today, put it in a 10% return on investment, and I just leave it, right? I sold my business. Now I can go do something else, another industry. I can, focus on my hobby. I can do nothing. I can travel, whatever. You can do whatever you want, depending on where you're dialed in at. But that 12 million at that 10%, in 5 years, you're going to have 19 million compared to the 2 million. 19 compared to the 2. Let's go to 10 years. 10 years, you're going to have 31 million compared to that 5. In 20 years, you're going to have $80 million compared to, what did I say, net 17? Yep, 80 million to 17. So if you're looking to create a legacy, just a legacy of money for you and your family, and it's generational wealth is what it is. $80 million in 20 years, right? That's freaking crazy. There's no comparison, but those are real numbers. So I don't care where you're at. Everything's for sale at the right price. Sell anything at the top of the market, go back in, reinvest, do what you want, go in another industry. Doesn't really matter. Sell. I mean, your blood, sweat, and tears are in this, but it's not your son or your daughter or your wife, right? You can sell it. So sell it, move on, invest your money wisely, and go do something else or go have some fun. But we're at numbers and multiples and a rolling 12-month EBITDA during a pandemic and the perfect storm that we've never seen before. Frickin' capitalize on the opportunity, just like you would when that guy walked and knocked on your door for your $5 million house and offered you 25. You're like, shit. Here's the keys, gone, right? That's where I'm at.
You are awesome, Lou. Your energy, it's insane. I love it. I love it. And I've loved the dinners and stuff we've been able to share along with you and your family. It's been a great couple of years getting to know you as well.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you very, very much for your time. I think a lot of people are going to pull a lot of really good information out of this. And Perfect. As always, and I know how incredibly open you are with everything. And if anybody has any questions, you can always call me, right? My information's all over the place, or you can get it from the horse's mouth. You can call Lou and ask Lou, and he'll be more than happy to walk you through any question. You've done it before. I know there's been plenty of people that have called you asking things left, right, and center. And you're forthright. Hey, this is how it works. This is how it doesn't. So there's no bullshit with you. And I appreciate that. We will be in touch.